The invitation arrived without my name on it. That was the first detail that caught my attention, not the venue, not the date, not even the gold embossed lettering. Just the absence. Everyone else in the family was listed. Spouses. Associates. Even distant relatives I barely recognized. Mine was missing. At the bottom, in smaller print, a note explained why. Professional colleagues only. I stared at the card for a long moment, unsure whether to laugh or feel insulted. Then my phone buzzed, as if summoned by the thought. Brother, better skip this one. My wife's father is a partner. No greeting. No explanation. Just instruction. My name is Lila. I didn't reply. Not because I didn't have words, but because I'd learned long ago that silence unsettles people more than arguments ever could. I placed the phone face down and went back to my work. At the time, my family believed they knew exactly where I stood in the hierarchy. I was the quiet one. The safe one. The daughter who never caused scenes. They assumed my life was modest, predictable, easy to overlook. They were wrong, but quietly so. My father's birthday parties had always followed the same pattern. Lavish venues. Strategic guest lists. Conversations that hovered just above sincerity. This one was no different, except for one thing. I wasn't invited. Not officially. The message was clear enough. This wasn't about family, it was about optics. About making sure the right people saw the right version of us. And I didn't fit that version. I considered going anyway. Walking in unannounced. Forcing smiles and awkward introductions. I decided against it. Instead, I made a call. I didn't grow up wealthy. My parents built stability through caution, not risk. Appearances mattered deeply to them, how things looked, not how they worked. My brother inherited that instinct effortlessly. He understood rooms, power dynamics, alliances. I inherited something else. Patience. After college, while my brother climbed visibly through familiar channels, I took a different route. I worked behind the scenes. Learned systems instead of titles. I stayed invisible by choice, not because I lacked ambition, but because visibility too early invites noise. Over time, that quiet turned into leverage. By the time my family stopped asking about my career altogether, I'd already built something substantial. Something intentionally detached from their expectations. They didn't know the scale. They never asked. The day of the party, I didn't dress up. I didn't hover near the venue. I stayed home, reviewing documents with a clarity that surprised even me. My phone remained silent, no messages, no updates, no accidental inclusions. At exactly 7:14 p.m., I authorized the transfer. It wasn't impulsive. It wasn't emotional. It was procedural. A portfolio realignment. Clean. Lawful. Final. The figure. $312 million, shifted quietly, the way real power often does. No alerts. No drama. Just a signature and confirmation. I closed my laptop and poured myself a glass of water. Then I waited. At the party, I would later learn, my father was in excellent spirits. He made his rounds. Shook hands. Accepted praise. Enjoyed the presence of people he believed defined success. My brother stood close, attentive, proud, his wife beside him, her father introduced with careful emphasis. Everything was going according to plan. Until it wasn't. A woman approached the table, professional, composed, carrying no drink, no gift. She waited until there was space to speak. "Mr. Chen?" she asked politely. My father turned, smiling. "Yes?" "I'm from First National," she said. "I need to confirm a change that occurred earlier this evening." The smile stayed, but something behind it tightened. Your daughter, the woman continued, consulting a tablet, has withdrawn her $312 million portfolio. The table went quiet. Not shocked, confused. My daughter, my father repeated. There must be a mistake. The woman shook her head. No mistake. She asked that all communication be directed to you. My brother froze. Someone laughed nervously. Another guest pretended not to listen. The woman waited calmly, letting the silence do its work. I'm sure you'll want to discuss next steps, she added. When it's convenient. And with that, she stepped away. I wasn't there to see their faces. But I didn't need to be. Because some reactions don't require witnesses. I didn't hear from anyone that night. That was how I knew it had landed. When something small happens in my family, they talk. They speculate. They message each other in overlapping threads, trying to agree on a version of events that feels comfortable. Silence only comes when no version is safe yet. I slept well. The next morning, my phone was heavy with missed calls. My father first. My brother second. My mother third. In that order. I let the phone sit while I made coffee. I read the news. I answered emails. I moved through my morning without urgency, because urgency was no longer mine to carry. At 9:32 a.m., I returned my father's call. Lila, he said immediately. What happened last night? His voice wasn't angry. It wasn't calm either. It was unsettled. There was a transfer, I said. A transfer? He paused. Why would First National approach me? Because I asked them to, I replied. Silence stretched between us. You didn't mention you had that level of involvement, he said carefully. You didn't ask, I said. That money, he stopped himself. That portfolio, why withdraw it like that? Without warning? I leaned back in my chair. It wasn't without warning. It was without permission. That's not the same thing, he snapped. It is to me, I replied. He exhaled slowly. You embarrassed us. I smiled faintly. I wasn't there. That made it worse, he said. There it was. Not concern. Not curiosity. Image. Why now, he asked. Why do this at my party? I didn't, I said. I made a decision earlier that evening. Timing isn't something I control for other people. That's convenient, he said. So was excluding me, I replied. Another pause. I didn't know, he said quietly. I know, I answered. That's the problem. He ended the call soon after, saying he needed time to understand the situation. He would take that time whether I allowed it or not. My brother didn't wait as long. He called twice. Then texted. What are you trying to prove? I replied with one line. Nothing. That seemed to irritate him more than any explanation could have. You blindsided us, he wrote. You made us look foolish in front of people who matter. I stared at the message for a moment before responding. You told me not to come, I typed. I respected that. A minute passed. This wasn't about you, he replied. It never is, I sent back. He didn't respond after that. By afternoon, the story had evolved. Not the truth, the narrative. According to my aunt, it was a misunderstanding. According to a cousin, I'd been advised poorly. According to someone else, I was emotional. No one used the word intentional. That word made them uncomfortable. My mother finally called that evening. Her voice was softer than the others. Lila, she said. Why didn't you tell us? I didn't think it mattered, I replied honestly. It matters now, she said. Yes, I agreed. Because you're seeing it. She hesitated. Your father feels blindsided. He excluded me from a family event, I said. I restructured my finances. Those are separate decisions. They don't feel separate to him. I know, I said. That's not my responsibility. She was quiet for a long moment. People were asking questions, she said finally. I'm sure they were. They didn't understand how this happened without us knowing. I closed my eyes briefly. Neither did I. 4 years. She sighed. We thought you were content. I was private, I corrected. There was a difference. Over the next few days, the calls slowed, but the tension didn't. My brother tried a different approach. He showed up at my apartment unannounced. You could have warned me, he said as soon as I opened the door. You warned me not to come, I replied. That felt clear. He ran a hand through his hair. You don't get it. My wife's father is a partner, I finished. Yes. You mentioned. This affects relationships, he insisted. So did excluding your sister, I said evenly. He looked at me like he was seeing something new, and didn't like it. When did you become like this? He asked. I considered the question. I didn't become anything, I said. I stopped pretending. He shook his head. You could have handled this quietly. I did, I replied. The transaction was quiet. The consequences weren't. He stared at me, searching for guilt. He didn't find it. What unsettled them most wasn't the money. It was the gap between who they thought I was and who I'd turned out to be, without them noticing. They replayed old conversations, searching for clues. They remembered moments where I'd been vague, non-committal, absent. They realized those weren't signs of stagnation. They were signs of separation. At another gathering, one I again didn't attend, my absence was discussed openly. She's always been reserved, someone said. She's different now, someone else replied. That word again. Different. As if I'd changed instead of simply stepped into view. A week later, my father requested a meeting. Not at home. Not at an office. At a neutral restaurant, mid-afternoon. When I arrived, he was already there, hands folded, expression controlled. I want to understand, he said once we sat down. I believe you, I replied. Why withdraw everything, he asked. Why not part of it? Because partial boundaries get negotiated, I said. Complete ones get respected. He absorbed that. You don't trust us, he said. I don't trust assumptions, I replied. He nodded slowly. People see you differently now, he said. I hope so, I replied. They were wrong before. He looked at me for a long moment, then said something unexpected. You didn't need us. I met his gaze. No. I didn't. The admission hung between us, uncomfortable, but honest. When we parted, nothing was resolved. But something had shifted. They no longer spoke to me like someone who could be directed. They spoke to me like someone who had already decided. And that made all the difference. The weeks after the meeting felt quieter than I expected. Not peaceful, just stripped of noise. No frantic calls. No dramatic confrontations. My family recalibrated in real time, learning how to speak to me without instructions, without assumptions. They didn't know where I stood anymore. That unsettled them more than the money ever could. My brother was the last to adjust. He sent one message, then deleted it. Sent another days later, short, neutral. We need to talk. I agreed. We met at a cafe halfway between our homes, a place neither of us had history with. He arrived early, posture stiff, eyes tired. You made things complicated, he said after we sat. I made them accurate, I replied. He scoffed. You know what people are saying. I do, I said. They're asking questions. They're questioning us, he corrected. I stirred my coffee slowly. That's what happens when narratives collapse. He leaned forward. You could have told me. You told me not to come, I replied evenly. We both communicated clearly. He fell silent. After a moment, he said, I didn't think you'd actually have that kind of leverage. There it was. Not apology. Not regret. Recognition. I wasn't trying to shock anyone, I said. I was correcting a misunderstanding. What misunderstanding? He asked. That my place in this family is conditional, I replied. That my value depends on who's watching. He rubbed his forehead. My wife's father thinks you did this to make a point. I did, I said. Just not the one he thinks. He looked up. Then what was it? I met his eyes. That exclusion has consequences. He didn't argue. For the first time, he looked unsure, not defensive, not angry. Just unsure. I didn't realize how little we knew about your life, he admitted quietly. That wasn't accidental, I said. It was protective. We finished our coffee without further confrontation. That was enough. The final shift came unexpectedly. First National requested a follow-up meeting, not about the withdrawal, but about future strategy. My father was invited. So was I. He hesitated before agreeing. Not because he didn't want to go, but because he no longer knew how to frame me. At the meeting, the tone was professional. Calm. Precise. When questions arose, they were directed at me. Not politely. Not deferentially. Naturally. My father watched, silent, as I answered with ease. Afterward, he walked beside me to the elevator. You built this without us, he said. Yes, I replied. I don't know whether to be proud or unsettled, he admitted. You can be both, I said. He nodded slowly. I should have asked. Yes, I replied. You should have. That night, my mother called. We were wrong, she said simply. I didn't rush to soften it. We thought keeping things separate was safer, she continued. We didn't realize we were keeping you small. I closed my eyes briefly. I wasn't small, I said. You just didn't look closely. She exhaled. What happens now? That depends on you, I replied. Not on what you say, but on what you stop assuming. She understood. I could hear it in her silence. At the next family gathering, something remarkable happened. No one asked me about my money. No one introduced me with qualifiers. No one explained me away. I was just there. When someone else tried to summarize my life, my father interrupted gently. She can speak for herself, he said. I noticed my brother watching. Learning. Not everything was repaired. Not everything needed to be. Respect doesn't require closeness. It requires clarity. Later that evening, as I prepared to leave, my brother walked me to the door. You didn't have to do it this way, he said. I did, I replied. He nodded. I see that now. Outside, the air felt lighter than it had in years. I didn't feel victorious. I felt finished. Finished explaining. Finished shrinking. Finished waiting to be included. They told me not to come. So I didn't. Instead, I showed them something they couldn't dismiss or control. Not money. Agency. And once you claim that, no invitation can ever exclude you again.